The message arrived at 2:17 a.m., glowing on my phone like a confession that didn't want to be read in daylight. Your kids aren't important enough for my daughter's birthday. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming, caught somewhere between the hum of the refrigerator and the slow breathing of my children down the hall. But the words didn't blur or fade. They sharpened, slicing clean through the last thread of denial I'd been clinging to about my sister, Mara. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone trembling in my hand, heart thudding as if it had been struck. In the next room, my son Ethan was murmuring in his sleep, probably chasing some impossible victory in a dream. My daughter Lily's nightlight glowed softly, casting stars across her walls. They were safe. They were loved. And yet, in that moment, they were dismissed, discarded with the casual cruelty of someone who believed the world revolved around her. Mara had always been like that. Loud when she wanted attention, cold when she didn't. Growing up, she was the golden child, the one who wore pretty dresses and collected praise like currency. I was the quieter one, the fixer, the sister who cleaned up messes, hers included. Even after we became adults, even after life bent and bruised me in ways she never noticed, I still showed up. Babysat. Loaned money. Smiled through insults disguised as jokes. This time, though, the insult wasn't aimed at me. It landed squarely on my children. The birthday party was for her daughter, Ava, turning 8. A massive event, apparently. Pony rides, a rented hall, a themed cake flown in from the city. I'd assumed my kids were invited. They adored Ava. Lily had already made a bracelet for her cousin, threading pink and gold beads with the careful seriousness of a child who wants to be liked. When I asked Mara, politely, cautiously, whether Ethan and Lily should bring gifts, her reply had come fast and sharp. I don't want them there. This party is about Ava. Your kids aren't important enough for it. No apology. No explanation. Just that. I reread the message until my eyes burned, searching for sarcasm, for context, for anything that would soften the blow. There was nothing. My chest tightened with a familiar ache, the old, conditioned instinct to excuse her behavior. She's stressed. She didn't mean it like that. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, rose beneath it. She said exactly what she meant. By morning, the house smelled of toast and coffee, and my kids padded into the kitchen, hair sticking up, faces open and trusting. Lily slid the bracelet across the table, pride shining in her eyes. "Can we give this to Ava at her party?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "Sweetheart, there isn't a party for us to go to." Her smile faltered. "Why?" Ethan looked up too, confusion knitting his brow. I considered lying, some gentle story about scheduling conflicts. But something inside me refused. They deserved the truth, carefully wrapped but not distorted. "Sometimes," I said slowly, "people make choices that hurt others. Even family." Lily stared at the bracelet, fingers curling around it as if it might disappear. Ethan's jaw set in that way that mirrored his father's, a man who'd once promised forever and delivered abandonment instead. My marriage had ended 2 years earlier, quietly and painfully, after too many nights of waiting and wondering. I'd learned then that love could leave without warning. This felt eerily similar. The day of the party came anyway. Social media flooded with images, Ava in a glittering dress, Mara radiant beside her, balloons arching over smiling crowd. Friends, distant cousins, people I barely recognized. My kids weren't in any of them. I told myself not to look, but curiosity and masochism won. Each photo felt like a door slammed shut. That evening, Mara called. Her voice was breezy, almost cheerful. "Hey, did you see the pictures? Ava had the best day." I said nothing. "Mara," I finally replied, voice steady in a way that surprised me, "why did you say that about my kids?" There was a pause, brief, calculated. "I was honest," she said. "This party wasn't about you or them. I don't owe anyone an invitation." Something snapped, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a clean break, like a rope worn thin at last giving way. "I'm done," I said quietly. "With what?" she scoffed. "With being invisible. With letting you decide my children's worth." She laughed, a sound that once would have intimidated me. You're being dramatic. Maybe I was. Or maybe, for the first time, I was being awake. I hung up before she could say more. My hands were shaking, but beneath the tremor was something else, resolve. I didn't yet know what the consequences would be, only that this moment mattered. That this wound would not be ignored or stitched over with silence. As I tucked my children into bed that night, Lily asked, "Are we bad?" "No," I whispered fiercely, pressing my forehead to hers. "You are everything." And as the house went quiet, I realized something unsettling and electric at once. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something Mara had never anticipated. The first consequence didn't arrive with thunder or confrontation. It came quietly, disguised as distance. I stopped answering Mara's calls. I declined invitations that included her name. I pulled my children back from gatherings where they'd once hovered at the edges, tolerated but never embraced. It felt unnatural at first, like walking against a current I'd spent my life flowing with. But each step away from her felt lighter. Still, the silence didn't go unnoticed. Our family noticed. Questions trickled in through texts and side comments at gatherings. "What happened between you and Mara? Why weren't you at Ava's party?" I answered vaguely at first, unwilling to air the truth. But silence had protected her long enough. Eventually, the story slipped out, carefully, factually. I didn't embellish. I didn't insult. I simply repeated her words. Your kids aren't important enough. People reacted differently than I expected. Some went quiet. Others frowned. A few looked uncomfortable, like they'd always sensed something was wrong but never wanted to name it. The narrative around Mara, the devoted mother, the organized sister, the one who had it together, began to crack. At work, things were unraveling too. I'd been balancing 2 jobs since the divorce, a daytime administrative role and evening freelance editing. Exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. But that exhaustion also sharpened my focus. I stopped apologizing for needing flexibility. I asked, no, insisted, for recognition. When my manager hesitated, I updated my resume and started applying elsewhere. It was terrifying. Stability was a fragile thing when you were a single mother with bills stacked like dominoes. But fear had ruled me long enough. Meanwhile, Mara started reaching out again. Longer messages this time. Defensive. Accusatory. You're poisoning the family against me. You're jealous because Ava has more than your kids ever will. That one stung, but it also revealed something ugly and unfiltered. I didn't reply. Weeks later, my mother called, voice tight. Mara's been crying non-stop. She says you've turned everyone against her. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly. I told the truth. She's under a lot of stress, my mother insisted. Her marriage isn't doing well. That caught my attention. What do you mean? A pause. You didn't hear. Her husband's business is failing. They might lose the house. The news hit me harder than I expected. Not with glee, no, but with a strange clarity. All those lavish parties, the image of perfection, it had been a performance. And now the stage was collapsing. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt something closer to sadness. For the years we might have been sisters instead of rivals. For the compassion she'd never learned to extend beyond herself. Then came the call that changed everything. It was Lily's school counselor. Your daughter's been very quiet lately, she said gently. She mentioned feeling not important. My heart sank. The damage had seeped deeper than I realized. That night, I sat with Lily on her bed, brushing her hair, letting the silence stretch until she spoke. Aunt Mara doesn't like us, does she? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Sometimes people don't know how to love properly, I said. But that's not your fault. Did we do something wrong? No, I said firmly. She did. Something in Lily's eyes shifted, pain giving way to understanding. And understanding, I knew, would one day become strength. The next morning, I received an email offering me a new job. Better pay. Flexible hours. A chance to finally breathe. I accepted immediately. News traveled fast. Mara heard about it through relatives. She sent one last message, dripping with bitterness. "So now you think you're better than me?" I typed, erased, retyped. Finally, I sent only this: "I think my children deserve respect." There was no reply. Days later, I heard she'd been uninvited from a family event, quietly, without drama. Someone else had planned it. Someone else had decided boundaries mattered. Mara's crown was slipping, and she could feel it. But I sensed something darker ahead. She wasn't done. And neither was I. Because when consequences truly hit, they rarely come one at a time. The confrontation happened on a rainy afternoon, the kind that turned streets into mirrors and thoughts into echoes. I was loading groceries into my car when I heard my name. Sharp, urgent. Mara stood a few feet away, hair plastered to her face, eyes blazing with a mix of fury and desperation. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of her usual polish. "You think you've won?" she demanded. I closed my trunk slowly. "This isn't a competition." "It always has been," she snapped. "You just finally decided to play." The rain soaked through my coat, but I didn't move. "Why are you here, Mara?" Her voice cracked. "Because everything is falling apart. And you're just standing there, like you don't care." I studied her, the sister I'd once idolized, resented, protected. "I do care," I said softly. "But I won't sacrifice myself or my kids anymore." She laughed bitterly. "So you cut me off. Tell everyone I'm a monster." "I told the truth," I repeated. "There's a difference." Her shoulders sagged. For a moment, the anger drained away, leaving something raw and frightened. "I didn't mean it like that," she whispered. "Yes," I said gently, "you did." The silence between us was heavy, final. Rain drummed against the pavement, punctuating the truth neither of us could escape. "I hope you figure things out," I said, turning away. "But not at our expense." As I drove home, my heart pounded, not with fear, but with relief. I'd faced her. I hadn't shrunk. I hadn't apologized for existing. At home, Ethan and Lily were sprawled on the living room floor, laughing over a board game. The sound filled the space, warm and real. This was what mattered. That night, as I tucked them in, Lily whispered, "I feel important today." I kissed her forehead, tears slipping free. "You always are." Later, alone with my thoughts, I realized the true consequence hadn't been Mara's unraveling or the family's shifting loyalties. It had been my awakening. I had stepped out of her shadow and into my own light. The future was still uncertain. Healing always is. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Because I knew who I was. And I knew what I would never allow again.